Louis said that initial investigations had shown no evidence that technical systems aboard the Airbus malfunctioned when it crashed and exploded into flames at an air show in Mulhouse. From Paris, Philip Short.
Mr. Mermaz said a study of the two black box flight recorders had produced no evidence which would justify grounding the aircraft and no sign that there'd been any technical fault. He added that the plane's engines picked up power normally after it had made a low-altitude run during an air show at Absheim near Mulhouse, the implication being that the pilot started increasing power too late to clear the woods into which the plane crashed. Officials later confirmed this. The flight recorders, they said, showed that the fuel supply to the motors increased only 5 seconds before the aircraft hit the trees. Meanwhile, the Mulhouse public prosecutor has said that when the accident occurred, the plane was flying at an altitude of only 30 feet, much lower than regulations permitted.
Earlier, British Airways announced it will return its two A320 Airbus jets to service tomorrow. And the weather, western parts will be generally dry with some sunshine, while other areas remain mostly cloudy. Some heavier rain is likely to affect parts of central and southeast England at times. And that's it for now. Our next news is at 8 o'clock.
Well, it's the old firm in business as usual on a Monday evening. Dell, Tracy and Humph. Sheila Tracy with Big Band Special at 8:30. Humph with the Best of Jazz at 9. And later on, some of these days at 10, the Monday Movie Quiz at 10:30. And Brian Matthew taking you round midnight starting at 11 o'clock. But to get us off and running, or even off and dancing, that first name I mentioned, Alan Dell.
Thank you very much. Hello again. Here we are with a few more of your Dance Band Days recollections, culled from the archives. As I've mentioned before, I get many a card or letter, and it's cards that we prefer, you must remember, that just mention various bands and vocalists and don't ask for any special song. One of the bands frequently mentioned is Fred Elizalde's orchestra, which was the centre of much comment, favourable, and also very much otherwise, when it was booked into the Savoy Hotel in the late 1920s. It was an orchestra with jazz inclinations due to the presence of some fine American musicians, Chelsea Quealy on trumpet, Bobby Davis alto sax, and the great Adrian Relidi on bass sax. With them were a select number of British musicians, one of whom is of special interest for a reason I'll come to later. First, listen to the Elizalde Orchestra in what is for them a pretty straight dance arrangement of Coquette, and listen particularly to the playing of saxophone section. The recording dates from July 1928. Elizalde Orchestra in July 1928 playing Coquette, one of the saxophonists in that orchestra. We shall meet again later in this programme, and that's all I'm saying at the moment. Now, somewhere back in February, I think it was, I was asked by BBC Enterprises if I'd write some notes for a new Robert Parker album on British dance bands that he was putting through his digital stereo process. The album has now appeared on BBC Records, and I'll give you a quick rundown on some of the 16 titles. There's a Fred Elizalde track from 1929, as a matter of fact, Singapore Sorrows. There's Jack Hilton's Choo Choo, Jack Payne's Harmonica Harry, Ambrose's I Want to Be Loved by You, Roy Fox with Peggy Dell, Without That Certain Thing, Lou Stone's Blue Jazz, Bertini's Tower Blackpool Orchestra, and Listen to That Rhythm, Billy Merrin with Everything's in Rhythm with My Heart. And there's also this Jack Jackson item from August 1933, I always keep my girl out late. You'll easily recognize Jack's voice. One of the other voices is Chappie D'Amato. Who the third one is, we don't know. And here it is in Mr. Parker's sprightly digital stereo sound.
We've tried our best to explore, and the only things that we've learned so far make us want to know more. We played with fire and we burned. Now here's a lesson we've learned. Never ask a girl in the afternoon, or you're sure to get spurned. We always keep our girls out late in the night, late in the night, late in the night. For when the moon and stars alone are alight, that is the time they fall. I know that sunshine is their shy light, and they're uncertain in the twilight. But when we keep our girls out late in the night, they won't go home at all. No, sir. Late in the night, late in the night, when the moon and stars above are alight, that is the time they fall. She may be bashful as a ninny, but after dark she gets any. And if you keep your girl out late in the night, she won't go home.
Jack Jackson, in his fairly early days at the Dorchester Hotel, as treated in digital stereo by Robert Parker on a new BBC Records album, Dance Bands UK. The number is REB 681. BBC Records REB 681. And I see this is volume 12 in the series, The Classic Years in digital stereo. Copious notes by yours truly. Now, in your old-fashioned Alan Dell analog mono, Henry Hall and the BBC Dance Orchestra form as Peggy Eade, who lives in Leatherhead, Surrey. Interesting choice, Miss Eade. This is the Eddie Polar song, Mine for Keeps, and it's sung by a musical comedy star of the time, June. A friend and I were trying to remember her other name and only recalled that she married Lord Inverclyde. It was one of the first guests, I think, on Henry Hall's guest nights. The record was made in March 1934.
At last I've thrown a lucky 7, mine for keeps. That 7 means a 7th heaven, surely you know. I can't let you go. Now you've been found, I'll have to build a fence around you. There will be no need to say goodnight in more ways. Can't you see that I'll be hanging round you always? Happy am I, no cloud in my sky. The sun will shine, for you'll be mine for keeps.
From Henry Hall and June in 1934, we're off to the latter end of the 1930s with a record for Mrs. MacArthur of Hyde in Cheshire, who'd like a memory for herself and other ATS colleagues, the song They Can't Black Out the Moon. As you say, Mrs. MacArthur, you can't recall which band or vocalist did this, but I do hope you like this November 1939 recording by J. Wilbur's orchestra and Sam Browne. I do.
o'clock at night. Oh, the darkness is a boon. Who cares if we're without a light? They can't black out the moon. I see you smiling in the cigarette glow, so the picture fades too soon. But I see all I want to know. They can't black out the moon. We don't grumble. We don't worry about alarms. When you stumble right into my arms. And when you kiss me, don't you realize that my heart's like a big balloon? And like the love light in your eyes, they can't black out the moon.
Wilbur and Sam Browne, They Can't Black Out the Moon. I'm sorry to say we've missed by a few days the birthday of the forever young Joe Loss, 79 on June the 22nd, so I'm reminded by Alec Yates of Great Yarmouth, a long-time special fan of Joe Loss. Alec, you asked about one of Joe's records I played last year. Well, I hope you have a pencil handy to note the information. Now, I'll tell you what, I'll play the other side now for you and Joe, and then I'll give you the info afterwards. That other side, which is from April 1939, is Deep Purple. The vocal refrain is by Chick Henderson.
When the deep purple falls over sleepy garden walls, and the stars begin to flicker in the sky, through the mist of a memory, you wander back to me, breathing my name with a sigh. In the still of the night, once again I hold you tight. Though you're gone, your love lives on when moonlight beams. And as long as my heart will beat, lover, we'll always meet here in my deep purple dream.
we are. I believe medium wave listeners have joined us now, and I'm sorry that you've missed out on quite a nice lot of things. That one, of course, was a famous tune played by a famous orchestra, Deep Purple, from Joe Loss, belatedly for his birthday on June the 22nd. And I hope that you enjoyed that, Mr. Yates, up there in Great Yarmouth. That, as I said, is the other side of the record that you mentioned, Thanks for Everything, on which the vocalist was also Chick Henderson. And it's a Regal Zonophone 78. The number is MR 3030. Regal Zonophone MR 3030. Onwards to the next request, and onwards from 1939 to 1940. Ken Bramley of Brooklands Avenue in Leeds. Yes, you are one of the longest-time listeners, Mr. Bramley. You would like a Jack White record. Norma Clarke is the vocalist, and the tune is Say It. Band with Norma Clarke and Say It. Now, back at the beginning of the program, we had a 1928 Fred Elizalde record. Well, in the saxophone section was a young lad of 18 who'd been recommended to Elizalde by Ambrose saxophonist Joe Crossman and Jack Miranda, who heard this young man playing in a dance band at the Metropole Hotel in Brighton. Getting on for, well, I suppose about 20 years later, that young man sounded like this. alto saxophone sound of one of the greatest players of the instrument that we've had in Britain, Harry Hayes. Some of you will know that in Harry's career, he played in the 1930s with Sidney Lipton, and then was an outstanding player in the Giraldo Orchestra, and I think everyone will recall one of his features with that band, Soft Shoe Shuffle. In the mid-40s, Harry Hayes led his own very neat little band that made a small but much appreciated series of HMV 78s, a band that sported the talents of such as Kenny Baker, I think, on some titles, and pianist Norman Sternfeld, who co-composed some titles with Harry. Here's just one of that collection of records, a little piece with, I suppose, a gentle kick in it, called Cherry Brandy. There we are. That's Harry Hayes and his band and Cherry Brandy. And the music profession and his wife Primrose will surely raise a glass to him on Wednesday when Harry is honoured with the freedom of the City of London. Congratulations to him, and may it be a wonderful day for a very nice man. Well, that's a happy note on which to end these dance band days. Just before we go to the cricket scoreboard, I've just had a travel flash handed to me, a message from our travel unit for drivers intending to head north out of London on the M1. Because of the very heavy weight of traffic heading north through the roadworks section near Watford, between junctions 4 and 5 on the M1, there's now a queue of about 6 miles, tailing back almost to junction 1. My goodness. Drivers are advised to find another route until at least 8 o'clock, by when the situation should have eased. That is, long delays heading north on the London end of the M1. Thank you very much, Julian. Julian Tutt there with this evening's cricket scoreboard. Now to our sounds of the big band era, and this is, I think, pretty typical of the kind of swing arrangement that was prevalent in 1940-41.